We will. Good evening and welcome to the Office of Emergency Service meeting for September 19th, 2020. Madam Chair, can I have a roll call, please?
Atherton. Belmont.
Present.
Brisbane. Burlingame.
Here.
Colma.
Here.
Daly City. East Palo Alto.
Here.
Foster City. Half Moon Bay.
Here.
Hillsborough. Menlo Park. Millbrae.
Present.
Pacifica.
Here.
Portola Valley. Redwood City.
Here.
San Bruno.
Here.
San Carlos.
Here.
San Mateo. South San Francisco.
Present.
Woodside. County of San Mateo.
Thank you very much, Madam Clerk. That brings us to item 2, the approval of minutes. Can I get a motion to approve the minutes from June 27th, 2019?
Move to approve.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much. That brings us to item 3, the operational area report. Captain Scott Kirkpatrick. Good evening, Captain.
My first emergency services council meeting, so I just wanted to introduce myself. To those of you who don't know me, I'm the new captain assigned to Homeland Security, and been with the Sheriff's Office for 25 years, and now, in the last 6 weeks, I have worked in every division in the office, so happy to be here. As far as the report, Kevin, do you want to talk about it? Or there's nothing different from the previous report, nothing outstanding that we had to report out on. If anybody has any questions, we'd be happy to answer them.
First of all, let us welcome you to the OES board. It's great to have someone with such a broad experience within the Sheriff's Department. I'm glad you're here with us and dealing with the issues around Homeland Security, and thank you very much. So that brings us to item 4, old business. Then we have item 5, new business. The OES calendar, Kevin Rose. Mr. Rose.
Yes, good evening, Chair, honorable members, Emergency Services Council, Kevin Rose from Office of Emergency Services. A few items I want to bring to your attention. Of course, the one we have mentioned previous meetings this Saturday, September 21st from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. at San Mateo Event Center, the 15th annual Disaster Preparedness Day, which I know a lot of your organizations are participating in, including your agencies and CERT organizations. Fun year, first responder vehicles, CAL FIRE helicopters going to make a grand appearance once again. Information booths, there'll be for the public training in CPR, first aid, stop the bleed, and children's activities, and of course presentations as well. So thank you all very much actually for helping spread the word, and we're looking forward to this Saturday's event. Also next is the upcoming November 7th EOC exercise. As mentioned previously, we are now up to 13 cities. Thank you very much for participating with the county. This is going to be an Emergency Operations Center functional exercise. And again, thank you those who joined us yesterday at the rock ribbon cutting. It's touch and go. We will either have our functional exercise at the regional operations centers with you helping us kind of kick the tires of the new EOC with communications and situational awareness. Always have a contingency plan. We have our OES offices and our existing EOC at the ready just in case for that exercise. But it's going to be all morning long. It's going to be communications back and forth with the various cities as they provide situational awareness and updates to us. And the other thing that we're going to be doing is working with our various public information officers and activating a joint information center. As you guys know, in catastrophic events, the county itself and the cities and other agencies tried to get together basically to standardize the messaging for the public as well as standardize the message for your employees based upon the event itself. So our Joint Information Center will be activated, and then in addition from some of your EOCs that will be fully activating, their public information officer will be working with our public information officer in JIC in standardized messaging. The next one, as I referenced, our Regional Operations Center. So we are very happy and excited for the many years of getting this project completed. This is going to be the new state-of-the-art facility for our public safety communications that has a hard move-in date of October 23rd. And then fortunately for us, we have a soft move-in that most likely will be after our November 7th exercise, mid-November, where we in ourselves will basically learn the new tools and systems that will become available to us for this Emergency Operations Center. It really is phenomenal. We're very excited with the county and its forward thinking. I mean, this is a project that essentially the county went nationwide to see various dispatch centers with best practices from around the U.S., as well as emergency operations centers near and far. And most definitely, private tour and a future ESC meeting we will host at The Rock for you to get a better idea and understanding of what it all contains. So questions about the OES calendar and the events coming up?
No, go ahead. Let's move on to,
Can I, quick question? When will the dispatchers be officially moved in?
So October 23rd is supposed to be the hard date. What they are doing as contingency, and it's very difficult with regards to the high-tech system, they have to mirror and reflect the actual dispatch console with the existing one down in the basement in case there's a glitch. So they have a backup system, but this is immediately right away. The public is not going to notice. The 911 will continue on even when the switch is made. Excuse me.
I asked because Millbrae contracts with the Sheriff's Department, so all of our dispatchers are down here, and we always recognize our other first responders, firefighters, and deputies, but we don't always recognize dispatch, so the city wants to give them a present, so we just want to make sure we time it correctly.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, we can help you with that with
Thank you.
Dan Bellevue, Head of Public Safety
Great.
Communications.
are there any additional questions? All right, why don't we proceed to item 2?
Okay. The item before you today, both the memo and the resolution, this is a historic measure and a motion actually coming before the ESC that is many years in the makings, where essentially all the players, all the components, and the political will going all the way up to the governor's desk has come into fruition. So you have the document before you today, and essentially what I'll do is to highlight it for what we're going to be taking into motion. This is a vote with regards to the Emergency Services Council, is you are the authorized disaster council for unincorporated San Mateo County as being the JPA for us. All of your municipalities are accredited disaster councils as well, which allows for them to initiate their own disaster service worker program for your community emergency response team. That allows your CERT programs and your CERT coordinators essentially to have the DSW authorization to approve the training, to swear in CERT members so that they have the DSW coverage in the event of a catastrophic disaster or imminent threat. Years accordingly, with regards to unincorporated areas of San Mateo County, our fire districts have done a phenomenal job basically in establishing CERT programs in and of themselves. And throughout the years, it's mostly been training for residents, kind of the treat and release program where they have the resiliency basically to respond to help their neighbors. Well, through the years, and especially this last year with the Coastside Fire Protection District becoming a sponsor housing agency for 2 branches of the 4 on the coast, also to include the La Honda Fire Brigade, the Kings Mountain Brigade, and then also to include the San Mateo County Cal Fire Department. They have all become housing sponsor agencies for the respective CERT programs. No longer just a training, these are teams ready to respond. They have, through the years, relied upon the county Emergency Services Bureau to provide that DSW swearing in, coverage, and approval of training and exercises. This motion creates the autonomy, takes absolutely nothing away from what the municipalities has, but empowers these fire districts at a battalion chief level or higher as negotiated. This is many years we've worked with the state, with the various fire districts who are here today that I am going to call upon to come up to speak a little bit about this, to allow for them with their own CERT teams that are at the ready to swear them in, to do their own approval of training and exercises, to have that autonomy as it's supposed to be within their area, and to have them at the ready to be activated upon imminent threat or catastrophic disaster. So if I may, what I would like to do is call upon from the Coastside Fire Protection District Board Member Steve Stockman, and then after him I would also ask Division Chief John Cox, along with Coastside Fire Battalion Chief Dave Cosgrave to come up to say a couple remarks to this board as well, if I may. Steve?
Really appreciate the time. I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself, but just to give context to my message, I'm a director on the Coastside Fire Protection District Board. I've been working closely with everyone that's sitting here. I personally am a retired first responder from Santa Clara County Fire. I grew up on the coast side, have 4 generations of my family, still currently live on the coast. So it's a very important issue to me. So I stepped in to try to help guide this and to give more local control to the coast side. So all our communities are vulnerable. There's no doubt about that. I think the coast side is very unique. It has some unique vulnerabilities of being isolated, not having close neighbors to respond mutual aid in a reliable or even capable time. And Kevin is very clear on that this is decades in the making, and it really speaks to a collaboration. It really did have discussions that happened all the way from state OES level, all the way down through the county into the city of Half Moon Bay, to the fire district, and really the volunteer community. That's really the individuals we're trying to empower. So with that, I just ask for your support on this. I think it's been well thought out. I think it's a good example of how government's supposed to work. I think it's very thorough. And with that, I'll pass to the next speaker. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Stockman. My name is Jonathan Cox. I'm a Division Chief for San Mateo County Fire Department as well as CAL FIRE. We oversee and have multiple hats, but essentially we are the County Fire Department. We protect all of the unincorporated parts of the county, oversee La Honda Fire Brigade, Kings Mountain Fire Brigade, and also provide fire protection for the Coastside Fire Protection District. So that's my title. Thanks for having us. I'm just going to reiterate and echo the same words that have already been said by Kevin, Director Stockman, and introduce Chief Cosgrave here. I think standing in front of you is someone who's made probably the most impact of CERT on the coast side in a long time. And I just want to call him out in front of everybody for building an extremely robust and growing network of CERT members in one of our most vulnerable communities in the county. So I'll just hand it over to Dave to say a quick word about himself. He did receive an award for his work this weekend. So he's a big asset and a big reason why we're standing here.
Thank you very much. I'm in my 29th year on the coast with the fire district out there and now CAL FIRE. And one of my passions was to realize the isolation we have and to ready the community. So for 20 plus years of the CERT program, it's, as they said, it was a catch and release program. We take people in and teach it, but we've never had the activation process of it. I went to the California for All conference sponsored by the governor down in San Diego in May and sat down with the head of the DSW program and other people, and I told them about the complications we have being a special district. We don't have a disaster council. And it was kind of like they'd never planned that on the CERT process. So they said through resolution, you guys could give that to us, and Kevin has written that for us, and we'll help you support that. And if you have any questions specific, we're here to answer those. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. Are there any questions? All right, thank you, okay. Kevin.
Sure. The memo before you in the reso, if you needed me to review it, I'm happy to do so if there's internal discussion as well. But motion to the vote, it's to you, Chair.
Members, are there any questions on the resolution before you? Seeing none, can I have a motion to adopt?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much. That brings us to item 5, San Carlos Fire Evacuation Exercise.
Great, and thank you all very much. The state will hear about this and was
3.
anxiously awaiting. I didn't want to influence the vote, but this is a big deal that they're paying it close attention to. Before I bring up Battalion Chief Chuck Lax from the Redwood City Fire Department to talk about the San Carlos Fire Evacuation Exercise, I also wanted for him to bring in tow our own staffer, Nolene Powers, who really, from idea to implementation, made this exercise a significant success. And so if Battalion Chief Lax could please come forward.
Thank you. Good evening, Chair and honorable members of the Emergency Services Council. I am Chuck Lax, Battalion Chief and Training Chief for the Redwood City and San Carlos Fire Department. It's an honor to be here tonight. So we had kind of discovered that we had a need in San Carlos, as we do in Redwood City and throughout the county, really, of preparing for wildland fire evacuations. So we targeted a date. We had brought on board a consultant We had 4 meetings before the date of June 8th for our activation of simulated fire. And we targeted 300 homes in the southern western part of the San Carlos Hills in the Wildland Urban Interface area, kind of the La Mesa Greenbrier area off of Britton and Crestview, if you're familiar with that area. And so we invited 300 people. We reached out to them by mailer, door hanger. I'll talk a little bit more about that as we go through the presentation. And out of the 300, we had 33 people sign up. And on the day of the exercise, we had 19 people participate. It was a multi-agency endeavor. We had 11 different participating agencies that helped out with this. On the day of the event, we had 15 apparatus, 6 CERT volunteers, and in preparation, we had 27 Boy Scouts of America that helped prepare for this event. Let me go back one here. So this just kind of gives us a look of what we did that day in preparation. Really, we started at 4 o'clock in the morning, and we were busy until about 9:30 that morning. And we did a lot of prepping. We really were hoping to be successful. This was a first-time event for us. And as you could see, we went all the way through to the end where we wanted to get a lot of feedback from those who participated as the volunteers from the community. Here's a picture of Chief Pucci getting that feedback from the volunteers that evacuated the area. While the evacuation was going on, we had apparatus in the area driving around, kind of trying to simulate traffic patterns that could be happening when such an event would happen. Our objectives were met. We performed very well for the objectives that we had established. We really were trying to leave the window open as long as we could to get as many participants to participate in the evacuation. And we did come across a little bit of an issue for some people signing up at the last minute, did not receive notification. I believe it was just one person. So in that one area, we had some challenges. But again, the goal there was to allow as many people to participate as we could. So here's the list of all the agencies that participated. And really, we needed all of them. To evacuate an area that size, it really does take a lot of people. It's not just something you could say, go ahead, get a few police officers, and we'd be able to accomplish that. And then, as I mentioned earlier, we had the Boy Scout troop reach out to us to ask how they could help. And so we said, sure, we've got a great idea. How about going around to those 300 residents and putting some door hangers on the doors? So we made a nice thank you video at the end to thank them for what they did for us. Any questions?
Mr. Reck.
Thanks, Chuck, for the presentation. And I also could you touch on a little bit, I know, and maybe you weren't part of these, we had a couple of community meetings also around fire safety. I think we had several hundred people attend a couple meetings, and we have a flyer that you guys sent out as well, just to sort of close the loop on kind of all the activities around this and wildfire.
Yeah, we really are. We've got, there's been a lot of questions about the wildland urban interface, particularly in San Carlos. And we've been trying to make sure that we're reaching out to those people with the concerns, addressing their concerns, getting mailers out for them, giving them information to access on our website. And this was just a beginning of the things that we're trying to do. As an idea, we didn't know how many people would participate, so we targeted 300 residents. Next year when we do this again, we're thinking we'll be able to increase that number a little bit, but of course we kind of have to plan that what if they all show up and we have to have a place for them to go, we got to feed them and all those other things that go with that. Yep, exactly.
Janet, Ms. Borgens.
Thank you. Thank you for this exercise and this report out. It was great. We got a lot of good feedback on it. So I just clarify, I have a little glare going on my screen and I couldn't see that far. So what jurisdictions did you partner with? It was San Carlos, Redwood City?
Sheriff's Office, CAL FIRE.
CAL FIRE, okay.
Office of Emergency Services.
Okay.
We were at the San Francisco Municipal Water District at the Water Temple. We used their site to evacuate
Great.
to. They
Great.
opened up the gates for us, gave us access to that. CHP helped with evacuations.
Great, great. And the reason I'm asking is because when the disaster happens, it's going to cover all of our municipalities. And so having those trainings with all our partners, Woodside Fire, all of the jurisdictions. And we hear a lot about it because Redwood City backs up into Woodside and San Carlos backs up into. So that's really great that you did it. And we're hearing a lot in the community about concerns about some of our more hilly areas and the all of the shrubs and the growth out there. So thank you for this exercise. We got a lot of good feedback on that. So it was really great. Thank you.
Our pleasure.
Is there any other questions? Yes, please, Ms. Chuang.
Thank you for your presentation. I have two questions. One is that I understand the county is working on evacuation plans for the entire county, and there will be zones assigned for the different cities. To the extent that you're doing the evacuation, is that in reference to the planning of the entire county? So that's one. Two is that the invitation going out, do you have any town hall meetings in advance to explain to the residents the purpose of the evacuation plans? Albeit it's pretty self-explanatory. I think at the end of the day, to increase the participation rates, it seemed to me that the resident will have to understand the purpose of it.
It's a very good point. We did not have town hall meetings to notify the residents of the evacuation. We did advertise and did mailers. We did do next door, the door hangers, and that was this our first attempt to see how this would go. So we recognized that the participation numbers were low, and the goal would be to increase the participation numbers as we move through the years. This was not part of the evacuation countywide plan that's being evaluated, so I'm not going to speak to that. Really, this was just an effort for us to see how it would go with multiple agencies being involved in a small little neighborhood to evacuate relatively a small amount of homes, 300 homes, when we compare that to some of the wildland fires that have occurred around the state over the last couple of years.
So just one more follow-up question. So is this the idea that you can take this model and then apply to the various neighborhood or various cities and be able to expand on that? Is that the idea of it?
You're exactly right. So we did it for the first time, kind of figure out how it goes. We actually have one scheduled in Redwood City coming up for September 28th. Then next year, we're going to pick a different neighborhood in San Carlos and Redwood City, kind of take apart the things that didn't work good and the things that work good and really hone down that process for ourselves.
Thank you so much.
This is fantastic. Thank you. Are the slides available that we can see them? And your materials, like your subject door hangers and things like that, can we steal that?
I would think that we would be able to get that out to anybody.
I
who
think
wants that.
I think we're probably all looking at various programs like that, and we can all learn from what you've done. I'm going to be talking later about our first disaster prep day, but I'm reaching out to the Boy Scouts, so I'm glad to hear that what you did with them. Did you also try reaching out with the Girl Scouts? We tend to be very reliant on our Boy Scouts in Millbrae, and I'm trying to make sure that we're bringing in the girl groups too.
Great idea. No, we didn't. They reached out to us. We took advantage of their interest in helping us out, and that is a well taken point to move forward with. Thank you.
Thank you. Congratulations.
Stellar job. Thank you very much. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. Have a good evening, everybody.
You as well. That brings us to item 4, active shooter exercise. Captain Kirkpatrick.
With the captain kindly allowing me to do these introductions. And before I bring Battalion Chief Bill Eichner up here, who's proof positive that cops and firemen can get along, in essence of his dream team partner that he'll describe this exercise, I wanted to ask if all of the OES staff, including Kathy Pape, could stand for the moment. I want to recognize the brawn of the staff, if you could please stand. These individuals dedicated a significant amount of their time, the background work, the tedious aspect of making sure that we meet the federal grant, the Homeland Security requirements, the logistics for this exercise to go forward. I wanted to steal the preliminary applause before you hear about this phenomenal exercise, if I may. And now if I could ask Chief Eichner to come forward.
Good evening, Honorable Chair and council members. So we put this active shooter on. It's a collaboration with, actually it's kind of unique because it was with Law and Fire and with, I sit on the Safe School Coalition. So I got schools and we got educators in there too. So we picked that mostly because that's where our biggest challenge would be right now, and we plan on doing this and opening this up to some other businesses and stuff, but I'll show you some slides on this. I want to, so we'll jump right into it. So this is how we did it. So we did it Monday through Friday, 2 3-hour modules a day. They mimicked each other. And then, so that's 10 modules total. So as far as participants, we got about 200 volunteers helped us with the moulage and everything. We got about 150 teachers, principals, superintendents, all of that in there. About 250 law folks, about 250 fire. And that was spread out through the week. So the objectives for us, and this comes from a lot of research, so, and items that have been learned from other shootings or events like this. So the big one for us is the integration of law, fire, and the educators, but unified command. That's the only way we're going to get through this and be successful and save lives. The rescue task force concept, which I'll talk about in a minute. We also added a module on this with a PIO component, public information officers, and with the hope to set up or solidify a JIC formation in this county and have that network so these people work well together. The other one is lockdown barricade. That was intended specifically for the teachers and educators. And then we identified warm, hot, and cold zones. And I'll explain a little bit about that as I go along here. So why do we train? We used to, when we first started doing this, we'd list off the active shooters or violent intruders. But now there's too many reasons to list. There's too many incidents that have happened, and it's getting worse. So by the numbers, so these are two important stats. I'd like to add a third one. The majority of the time when the event starts, it's usually over in about 4 to 7 minutes. But these two numbers, and we have two exceptions for this, but 96 to 8% of the time, it's usually a male. 96 to 98% of the time, they're acting alone. So in the state of California, San Bernardino, it was a male and a female. And then for us, YouTube was a female. So there always will be exceptions, but and these numbers come from the FBI. So this is it might be a little hard to see, but it's interesting. I put it in here because the active shooter incidents, we hear a lot about schools, but the reality is it's at businesses. So businesses is about 45%, a little over. Education places about 24%. So the ones that make the press, but so these are the numbers from the FBI and shows where these events happen. We also can add now Gilroy, which would be the open space areas, and which is another piece that was kind of ironic. We'd scheduled this out. We planned this almost a year ahead of time. Our Monday, right after the Gilroy shooting, is when we started our training. So this is, I got the next slide, I'll explain it a little better, but 50% of the time, once we find out about it, it resolves itself, and the other 50% of the time, it'll be resolved by law. And this next one's a little hard to follow, but on the left side of the screen here is when the event begins, and then 45% of the time, the attacker stops, and it's either because they commit suicide or they leave. The other, of this 50%, 9%, the victims will stop the attacker. So on the right side is after police arrive. So when that happens, either the attacker stops, that's about 14% of the time, and then just below that, 32% of the time, the police will go in there, engage the bad guy, and make it stop. So the evolution of our response. So Columbine, 1999, 13 dead, 21 injured. That's where we started. And SWAT, everybody kind of held their ground and waited for SWAT to arrive. They went in and did what they did. So after that, we learned that's not going to work. We can do better. So then we went to a 4-officer diamond. Then we went to immediate response protocols. And it's evolved all the way down to a 1-officer response. The intent is to get in there and engage the bad guy to stop the killing, ideally. and then give people the next part is where we form RTFs, gives us a chance, fire and law together, to get in there and help save lives. So this is basically what we work on, the acronym. So stop the threat. That makes sense. Stop the bad guy, and then hopefully there won't be any more killings. Stop the bleeding. Rapidly do all of this, extricate to a safe position, get them assessed by the medics, and then transport to definitive care. So in our county, we have 2 trauma centers. We got San Francisco General up in the city, and we got Stanford. So ours is, I'll talk about Aurora, Colorado in a minute, but ours are, depending on the time of the day, our transport time can be quite a bit. So we always have the option of helicopters, but additional challenges. So this is important because a hot zone, that's fire does not typically go in a hot zone, or we don't like to go in hot zones, but that's where the active shooter or the imminent danger is still active. And then once law goes through, and I'll give you an example of this in a minute, is the warm zone, and then the cold zone will be outside where, you know, it's safe. So, but we also have to remind, and we train our firefighters and our law folks, that that warm zone could turn into a hot zone in a flash of an eye if there's more than one shooter, or they circle around, or whatever. So it's just something, and that's built into our RTF concept. So a couple things to consider. Like I just said, the warm zone can turn into a hot zone. That's why we have the RTFs. They can sit there and protect us. 2 big questions, and we reinforce this with our fire guys because we're not used to getting shot at regularly. So we do not, the law will not leave us alone. So if there is a bad guy that pops up, half of whatever's protecting us will go engage the bad guy. So we're not left unprotected. That way we can help the victims, and the victims that we're helping are not unprotected. The other part is they do stay with the medics, and then so they do not let the bad guy go. They'll go chase them down and stop them. And then that's part of what they can do. We train so they can bifurcate and go where they want and need to go. So on the left side of the screen is what the previous procedure was, Columbine time. So law and medical aid and all that would be on the bottom left there. That's a cold zone. Usually it'd be a building or a couple of buildings in a safe area. We'd set it up and have to get the victims to them. And then law would go in and go take care of the bad guy, the shooter in the middle. On the right side is our new tactics. So you can see these on the lower right there. They have the rescue task force is going in. We're protected by that building, and law will engage the bad guy in the red. So this way we can get that treatment to the injured victims sooner. So what is an RTF? It actually began, or the concept came up in Arlington, Virginia. It was some fire guys said, hey, how can we work together and get aid to these victims that are down faster? So they developed it, and that's how it's progressed through the time, using the incident command system and working with our law folks. Oops. So some of the concepts for that, establish it as soon as possible. I'll give you a couple of numbers of what we've been able to establish. Again, once fire arrives on scene, usually law will just go until somebody says, whoa, back off, and then get some, nothing against my law friends, but back off. And then basically what we find that works the best is a law commander or supervisor parks right next to a fire supervisor, and they are within ear's reach and make things happen. Because there's a couple things that are a challenge. We can't hear, we don't have law radios. And even if I did, I couldn't understand what they say because they talk law. And then on the fire side, so that's the big one. And then that communication back and forth is a check and balance between what's going on in the field because it's total chaos. And then we work as one unit, and then the communications challenge is a big one. So the RTF concept, this is kind of what it looks like. So we work together. We don't like to teach that's one individual's in charge. It's a team. So again, if it's something that has to do with the safety of the team, law will usually take the lead on that. But they will always have fire in their ear going, hey, this guy, we need to get him out of here really fast. And then we will work together to make that happen. So it's not one person in charge, it's everybody working together and having that exceptional communication. That's always a challenge. So this is kind of what it looks like when we do it in real life. So you got the law guys with the guns, the fire guys, no guns. And then, but the fire guys we got it a couple years ago with ballistics. So we got vests and helmets so we can go in there and get to where we need to be. This is what a rescue task force looks like. We'll identify the patient. We don't do our typical triage and treatment of the patients out there. It's just down and dirty, get them out of the hot zone and get them to an area where they can be treated better. So the other big piece of this is the unified command. So we have to work together. And I bring up Aurora, Colorado, because that was in 2012. It was at the movie theater. There's a lot of information out there on it. If you want to talk about it, get a hold of me. But 12 dead, 58 injured. But one of the big issues was PD showed up and they blocked all the ingress and egress. And we couldn't get ambulances to the back of Theater 9 where a lot of the fatalities and stuff happened. Again, the communication issue is out there. Don't know if we'll solve it in my lifetime, but if we identify it, we can make workarounds. So again, PD requested medics to the back of Theater 9 multiple times. Casualty collection points, that's where we can put all the victims in one area and take, it's easier to maintain security for that and treat these folks at a casualty collection point. And then PD cars at that particular event ended up transporting a couple victims. That won't really work here. So my understanding is in California, it's not okay to really do it. The other part is in Aurora, they had 2 trauma centers, level 1 trauma centers, like 4 or 5 minutes apart. So that was a luxury that it helped there. But the bottom line is we need to be able to communicate and work together. So they've made large strides to improve that in Colorado. And hopefully we don't have to go through something like that. So what's important now? Again, the contact team goes in, neutralizes the threat. We'll establish there's still little differences in lingo with law and fire, but we still work together. Fire calls it a forward command post, law calls it a tactical command post, but that's where their 2 vehicles will be side by side. They work together, get the right resources to the right place. That's the intent of it. Staging area, we practice that on our exercise, and then establish, once those hot, warm, and cold zones are established, then we can get the RTFs in right after them. And then establish those casualty collection points. So the bottom line is you're going to have a lot of law folks showing up, and they're going to go in and take care of the bad guy. But we have to remember to leave access in and out and then communicate. And the only way to do that right now is dance side by side, especially at the command post. And then once they're together, we can establish that RTF and get them in there. So common verbiage. So the threat dictates the hot zone. So, and then rescue task force, RTF, we just talked about that. Unified command, casualty collection point. And then when we're sorting out these folks, you have non-AM and ambulatory patients. So if they can walk, let's get you out of the danger area, get you to a place that we can take care of you. And then I put the asterisks at the 2 bottom ones. Every time we do this, we practice what the current policy is, but we experiment with it too. So 2 simple ones that we came up with. So communication is always a challenge. So in this county, fire has a designator from top to bottom of this county, and they don't repeat. There's only one engine 19. So what we did was in the beginning, it would be Rescue Task Force 1, Rescue Task Force 2. When you start changing things up with communicating and designators, it makes it confusing. So what we came up with was it'll be whatever that engine company is. It just makes sense. It's just much easier to manage. The other big one we did at this last one was typically you would have a staging area and Unified Command would call up and say, hey, I need 3 firefighters and 4 law. And then they would show up, they'd form up, get their mission, and they'd go. What we did on this one is we started forming that up, have them form up at the staging area. And then it was just one radio transmission. I need a contact team. I need a rescue task force. So we were getting contact teams in our exercises. We were getting contact teams on site and making contact within 2, 3, 4 minutes. Albeit that it's a small footprint in what we're doing, but the big one we really did well on this last exercise was the RTFs. So we formed those up, and we had RTFs with the patient within about 7 to 10 minutes, which is huge because you can figure somebody can bleed out in minutes. And then the other big part is we do the teach tourniquets and chest seals. We just do the bare bones to keep them alive to get them to an area where we can treat them. So, but that's stuff we plan on continuing to experiment and find out what works better. And hopefully we can be on the leading edge for us. Whoops. So this was the site. It was Mills High School. Again, I'd like to give kudos to the school district for letting us do this. We did one the year before Cappuccino. So this is Mills. They gave us a run of the whole school. We only did half of it. And then this is the floor plan of where we did. So all the areas in yellow are where we were playing. We added a couple curveballs in there. So I put a special needs class in there. We didn't actually have kids or players in there, but that was a curveball for the command. So, hey, we got special needs. If nobody's injured in there, we'll just send force protection down there, let them shelter in place. Those kids don't need to see stuff like that, especially special needs. So we did that. The other big one we did was a PIO component. So we had actually it worked out great because at Mills they had a social media classroom there with the green screen and everything. So we brought in folks from, it was opened up to everybody in the county. So we got a lot of PIOs were there. Just to go back to this exercise was opened up to every law agency, every fire agency, all the PIOs in the county, and all the educators in the county. So that's how we got the folks. And then I'd like to close out with a little video that Channel 7 News did.
In this scenario, there is one shooter and multiple casualties. The shooter's victims are mostly in the school cafeteria. Law enforcement and firefighters respond quickly. They clear the classrooms, escorting students and teachers out while making sure the gunman is not hiding among the evacuees.
It's all happening very, very quickly, within minutes, and ultimately you have to go towards the chaos.
The injured are played by volunteers. The bloody makeup so realistic. The make-believe wounds on the body so hard to look at. The dead are mannequins. The rounds fired are blanks. But the scenarios are eerily realistic.
Police and deputies are doing multiple things here. They're helping and protecting firefighters and other first responders. They're also asking those here where the shooter went and is he alone?
Nationally, the average is 98% chance that it's only one shooter. However, we always prepare for the worst case scenarios.
Can you walk? Okay. So each year we'll make it a little bigger, a little better, and add some more challenges that happens to us in real life.
The lone gunman runs through the cafeteria to a hallway. Police chase him.
All right, I got the fire. Got the fire. Got it.
They get their man. This week, 143 agencies on the peninsula participated. So far, 143 officers have gone through the training. Vic Lee, ABC 7 News.
So we got some press on that, Channel 2, Channel 7, Daily Journal, all that, which is all good stuff. A lot of logistics went into that. I couldn't have done it, or we couldn't have done it with all the people helping us. My main partner in crime is Anthony Riccardi, San Mateo PD. He's on the SWAT team, has been forever. He's a great partnership to put this on, and then with the school district. And then we developed this with a work group. So we had representatives from the top end of the county to the low end of the county, mostly law folks, and we got together and came up with what we did here and hope to do it again. So, any questions?
Great. Are there any questions? Yes, Ms. Valas.
I went on Thursday.
Did you like it?
It was totally amazing. The adrenaline. I thought maybe people wouldn't feel it.
But you feel it.
Yeah.
It was pretty intense, and you did great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Keegren, and then Ms. Chuang.
I also attended that Thursday, and it was actually really good. You know, we hear this verbally, but it's different to see it visually. So it really puts it in perspective, and it's a reality check. So my question to you is, you've done these exercises at 2 of the schools. Have you considered doing it at a business futuristically?
We are. So right now, the biggest loss of life is my philosophy is do the most good for the most amount of people, and then having the schools and then doing it for a week. We can do a single day exercise, 6 to 8 hours, but we don't get as many first responders involved. So those are 2 challenges. We absolutely do plan on doing it in businesses. It's an even bigger challenge to get a business because it would only be on a weekend and for a real finite amount of time. But if you have some businesses that want to play with us, give me a call, please. I know we have some on the line that would probably play with us, but it's a challenge too. So, but I am asking for a school, and hopefully we can get one in the middle of the county. I know Pacifica's offered up some of the schools there, but getting all the fire and law folks up to one end of the county is more of a challenge logistically. So we try to do something centrally located. So, but thanks for participating. Do you recommend it to your coworkers here? Okay.
Ms. Chuang, then Mr. Medina.
I compliment to you and the entire crews for putting this together and actually have the law and the fire to work together. I think that you are absolutely right. The communication is a challenge, but the fact that to understand the evolutions of your training from 1999 to now 2019, and how you're concerned about saving lives, and then the fire are willing to go in with the protections of the law, and then the law officers are now learning to use the tourniquets to save lives. It was quite impressive, and I truly kudos to you. Thank you.
We are a team, so it doesn't matter whether if you have a red fire engine or a blue cop car or whatever. We're a team, and our goal and our interest is the same: save lives and stop or further death. So,
yeah, I also attended with some of my colleagues that spoke on Thursday, and San Bruno had something because we had gotten a grant, so we did it at the junior high, the high school, city hall on 3 separate days, and then going to the county level one as well. It's something that public safety on both areas don't always have that opportunity or training, so I think it's critical. I can tell you from my perspective as mayor that we did have the YouTube shooting, which obviously is not the characteristic, but in essence to watch, to respond to that and watch the evacuation and the process and trying to everybody that had to do everything. And then of course we had the Tanforan Mall, which was came out as an active shooter but was not, but at the same time was responded as such. And again, when I was there to see the collaboration and the cooperation of all agencies there on the spot, willing to do what they need to do. We had a speaker here in April who is a San Bruno resident and had made a public comment at the beginning of the meeting, which was about what should have been done or could have been done at YouTube. And in my experience, that goes back to the PG&E explosion back in 2010, is that it's very easy for people in any city or town to second guess until you're in that situation. And I always tell them, until you're willing to go in yourself, we don't need to second guess. We need to support, and we need to know that not everything goes to script, and not everything goes and there's on a blueprint for every scenario. So I think it's also behooves all of us as elected leaders to support our public safety and to support them at these times of crisis, and not to second guess at that spot, and also to support when residents think that they have a better opportunity or avenue. And I think, as Sue had said, when you see it and the realization of what could be and what will be, unfortunately, is very sobering. And I appreciate being there and what you've done and the continued effort to try to help the county.
thank you.
Are there any more additional questions? I just want to say I participated, as well as I think it was Ann, Sue, Marie, you. Did I forget? Did anyone else participate? And I just wanted to thank you for just really being inclusive, for really educating us. You took each of us. We were able to. Rico and I were able to go through the second scenario inside the room. Then we were able to witness through the hallway. And a special shout out to Joe Spanheimer from the Pacifica PD. But I think Sue had touched upon a really good point. The adrenaline that you feel through that exercise is, it could be somewhat intense. But I think the professionalism of both the officers and the fire department, I think you touched upon a very profound point. I mean, working together collaboratively. I mean, that's the one thing that really just sort of struck me with the different teams, the diamond you talked about. So thank you for your leadership, and thank you. It's Anthony, right? Is that?
Anthony Riccardi.
Please.
He's doing SWAT training tonight. That's why he can't be here.
Please express our gratitude, and hopefully we'll be able to participate in another event again. So thank you very much, okay?
So does that mean I'm going to see all of you next year when we do this?
Don't
I'll buy you lunch.
Let's not push it.
Okay.
Okay. All right.
Thank you, guys.
So and then we're on to the Yes, Ms. Chuang. Yeah. Yes, you can.
Just one more comment, and that is, and I want to say kudos also to Kevin Rose and also the captain for guiding us, the elected, in that situations when there's training going on, there's action going on, and we were able to be escorted and actually get a first look, as Sue have mentioned, that to get as realistic as possible, but while still, in a safe area to observe. Truly appreciate that. It's not easy to manage the media out there, and to have a good publicity going out to the residents, to the communities, for them to understand the significance of the training, the importance of the training, and also to feel secure that the law enforcement and the fire departments are working together along with the local jurisdiction. So truly appreciate that too. That's an effort.
Excellent. That brings us to item 5, a brief hazmat update by Battalion Chief Jeff Thorne. And then we'll go to Ken Anderson.
All right, good evening. It's kind of hard to follow that one up.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
So just give me an update of kind of what our hazmat team's been doing over the past, quarter or so. We kind of focused mostly on one incident that we did run back on July 1st. You may or may not have heard about it. Something small that happened on Facebook. Yeah, well, it's been an interesting year for us. We started out with a white powder incident in San Bruno, which turned out to be nothing. Then we said, you know what, let's go to radiological stuff. Something we don't do a lot, just in San Carlos. Again, it's nothing. Now let's go to East Palo Alto. When we get dispatched for a possible sarin exposure, people aren't familiar, sarin is actually a weapons of mass destruction. That's extremely toxic. It's what they used in Tokyo several years ago on the subway trains. And it injured several hundreds of people and killed a few as well. So again, that kind of raises the hair on the back of your head just a little bit going to this event. How it all happened, because we got dispatched for this. Facebook has this phenomenal inspection process of their mail. I could tell it to you and you still wouldn't believe it. They have hazmat monitors, clean rooms, people in chemical suits, just to check their mail every single day. So they're doing the hazmat inspection. One of their monitors pings. Sarin. That's weird. Okay, let's try it again. Sarin again. That's weird. Let's try it a third time because it can't be right? Third time. Pings the third time. So they call us. We come out. It can't be that. Who's going to do a chemical attack in San Mateo County? It doesn't happen. We went out with our monitors, went in. Same thing. We got the same hit. Okay, now let's slow it way down, find what's going on. Now we start bringing some extra people in. We talked about all the public partnership we had. On this event, we had everything from the U.S. Postal Service to the Postal Police, FBI, FBI's hazmat team, the National Guard, San Mateo County hazmat team, law enforcement agencies, you name it, we're all there. This event lasted over 14 hours. So we actually had to call in a special type of machine from the National Guard, a mass spectrometer, to actually identify it down that it wasn't sarin. It's actually a chemical called a trimethylphosphate, which is actually a very common chemical used in the manufacturing of pesticides and pharmaceuticals. Kind of weird how those are paired together. And also coloring of clothes. They believe it got somehow kind of cross-contaminated during the mail sorting process. And because on a molecular level, it mimicked very similar to sarin gas. So it's kind of neat. We learned a lot on this. And one thing we learned heavily on this event is the power of social media. We're always taught you have to work at the speed of communication, right? Social media communication is like that. One of our other battalion chiefs, Ken Thrasher, my predecessor here, his son was in Paris for school. He saw it on the news before we got on scene. Shows you how fast it worked on this. Yeah, it's amazing how fast, trying to keep constantly ahead of this curve. So it's a rather significant event that turned out to be rather minor, but it shows how well agencies that we never work together commonly, how we can still come together to solve a rather significant event in a very safe fashion. We did identify a lot of gaps in our team that we're addressing, mostly because of the whole WMD thing. Because we don't have a lot of in this county. Let's face it, San Mateo County is not a prime target, but we're a secondary one due to our high profiles to the north and the south. And so we're addressing those needs right now by increasing our training, increasing our personnel. Starting next month, we're actually bringing on another 8 to 10 members of our hazmat team. We're increasing our training on WMD responses as well. And we're also looking through our certification through the state to increase the capabilities of our team as well. So we can address these issues. Because unfortunately, like we saw with the violent intruder, active shooter, it's becoming more of what is happening in our society, unfortunately. And we're trying to get ahead of the game to be prepared for while we're out there. So I'd be more than happy to answer any. Not much beyond that. It's kind of a big event, but again, just a few other incidents that we had during the county. About 18 investigations, about another 3 to 5 responses for the last quarter, which is about what we normally do. But our training hours are always continuing. Our expanding our members is always continuing. But again, we're always getting prepared for when we actually do have that big event like we had, unfortunately, 3 of them this year so far. So,
Are there any questions?
Yes.
Ms. Borgens?
Thank you. So, thank you. Thank you for being so focused on really getting to the bottom of what that was. But I really feel that we should look at San Mateo County as a potential threat, as well as our neighboring communities, because when that threat does happen, there is not going to be any borderline. So I really, really want to see your ability and do whatever it is you need to do to put us at the top of that level. Because if you work below that level, we'll never be ready for it, and we won't be able to help our neighbors. So I really, look at us like we're the big threat too. So,
and that's what we're doing. We're right now, the way state looks at hazmat teams is by types, 1, 2, and 3. We're a type 2, so we're right in the middle. Type 1 are the ones that are designed to go for like your San Jose, San Francisco. They're designed to go to WMD type events. We're trying to achieve that goal, but the biggest hindrance with anything else is unfortunately cost. And like that one monitor I told you that we needed to get from the National Guard, it's about $100,000 for that one monitor. And there's a lot more things that go with it. So we are working it's a slower process, but we are working towards that goal to get to it. And we're applying through grants through the UASI and everything else to try to get the funds that come in to help us achieve that goal as we can. But that is our goal. Okay, thank you.
Brings us to item 6, Emergency Managers Association update. Mr. Anderson.
Good evening, Mr. Supervisor Canepa and council members. Thanks for having me tonight. First of all, I want to say happy Disaster Preparedness Month. I hope all your kits are updated and ready to go, just in case something does happen in our county, like we were just talking about. First, I want to say what a great time we are in our county right now. You've heard a lot of great things that have happened and are continue to happen, and I got 2 more to add on. And then where we're going, we got a busy end of the year coming up with 3 exercises happening in our county. One at the airport, one that Kevin spoke about briefly earlier today with the Office of Emergency Services, and then 13 other cities opening their EOCs, Emergency Operations Centers. And then lastly, the health department doing another exercise in the end of November. So a lot of other good things that you'll hear about the next time we come up here. 2 of those things that I want to talk about that you knew about from the last meeting that took place. One was a 4-day emergency management concepts all hazard class that took place that the County Office of Emergency Services was able to capture a grant to help pay for that class. And the county had a little over 40 employees there for 4 days. And then amongst other agencies, some of those agencies are here in the crowd today, as well as myself and other emergency managers got to partake. And I want to say I've been doing this probably pretty close to 10 years in emergency management, and it was probably one of the best exercises that we've done collaboratively through all those agencies in the county's Emergency Operations Center working together through 2 days of classroom work and then 2 days of fast-paced scenarios. And, to be prepared, you got to exercise, and that's what we did. It was probably the captain's, Kirkpatrick's first week, I think, on the job. So he got to meet a lot of people, and I want to say it was a great exercise. So hopefully we can do something like that in the future. I want to give thanks to the airport. I know the last couple of years it's been tough with them bordering on our county, but they really showed up and let us use their EOC for 4 days, and that was really nice of them. The second one, that was another collaborative group, was between the Emergency Managers Association, Office of Emergency Services, and then Tetra Tech, our local hazard mitigation plan team that helped us 3 years ago put the plan together. They came, we put the little workshop on, and we learned a little bit about what the state and FEMA's doing in mitigation. And we also learned how to use the new tool to revise and to make changes in your emergency operation, not your emergency operation plans, your local hazard mitigation plans, excuse me. So that door is open, that window's open, so your cities should be doing that now. And I want to thank Belmont for hosting that and letting us use the sports complex. and then Tetra Tech as well. And it was another day of great learning as well to help us get ready to put those things into our plan. Lastly, hope to see you all on Saturday at Disaster Preparedness Day. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That brings us to the last item, I believe, which is the American Red Cross update.
Yeah, thank you, Supervisor Canepa. Just a quick report. In the quarter before last, we responded to 9 fires. This quarter it went up substantially. We're up to 15 fires. I want to thanks to all the agencies we worked with, particularly Daly City and South San Francisco, who seemed to took the brunt of the hits on that. So we responded to 15 fires, serving 79 victims that came out of those fires. On the preparedness front, we taught 540 people disaster preparedness skills. A number of those classes actually were in your cities that included shelter operations training. I want to thank San Carlos and South San Francisco in particular for working with us, and we're happy to do this going on. Going forward, we're looking forward to Preparedness Day tomorrow. We think that's a really great event, and also in Hillsborough on Sunday. So, yeah, I think we got a really great thing going here. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. That brings us to announcements. Are there any announcements? Ms. Snyder.
Millbrae is hosting its first Disaster Preparedness Day, and I want to give a huge shout out to the Sheriff's Department and who we call Chief Kunkel, but Captain Paul Kunkel. He's been absolutely fabulous to work with, both on the bike rodeo and this one. So we welcome any of our adjacent cities. It's not just for people of Millbrae, but we hope to have everything from apparatus to training classes, including Stop the Bleed. We're also trying to make it a community group, hence the reference to the Boy Scouts. Any of our groups that may be stepping in that we may not traditionally think of helpers during that time. So Girl Scouts, Boy Scouts. So I'm very grateful for that Boy Scout helping with door hangers. And hopefully we're going to have fun too, poster contests. And I'm coming up with some relays for building your Go Kit. The goal of this event is actually Go Kits and defensible space and a communication plan for your family. Thank you.
Great. Are there any other announcements? All right. Marie, Ms. Chuang. Sorry, I didn't see Marie.
Sure. Bill from the Red Cross just mentioned, and so this Sunday, 2 to 5 at West School, Hillsborough is hosting a Neighbor Fest, which is basically an emergency preparedness block party for the entire town. So you're welcome to come and join us for some treats and meet our canine dogs and our SWAT team, and also we have a earthquake simulators that you can experience apparently a Richter scales of 8. So if you have a few minutes to spare to come by, you're all welcome. 2 to 5. Yeah, Sunday 2 to 5 at West School.
All right. Are there any other additional announcements? Seeing none. That is public comment. Do we have? Don't all run up here. Is there any public comment? Okay.
There were no cards turned in.
Thank you, Mr. Norris. Our next meeting, our future Emergency Service Council meetings, the Administrative Committee meeting will meet January 8th, 2020. The ESC meeting will meet January 23rd, 2020. Can I have a motion to adjourn? All those in favor? Aye. Thank you.
This is fun. Wait for the coast.